The spiritual climate is changing, and young people, Gen Z and Gen Alpha in particular, are more open than ever to the gospel of Jesus. What does it look like to equip the young people in our churches to share their faith with their friends? In a sacramental church tradition, I'm Melanie Cave, Managing Director of Roots, and today I'm speaking with Jess Masters-Carrer, who is the Network Youth Worker for WYMIC, Youth Ministry and Communion, and Youth Ministry Advisor for the Diocese of London. We explore why young people are attracted to sacramental spirituality, mission styles that are more about come and see than convincing, and we reflect on embracing the mystery, liturgy, ritual, asking questions, and following Jesus even when we don't have all the answers. Thanks for joining us on the Roots for Churches podcast. Here we go. Welcome, Jess, to the Roots for Churches podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honour.
So we're just starting a new series on helping young people share faith because we're aware that culture is shifting. There's something going on. Young people are really open to exploring faith, exploring spirituality. They're turning up at churches, like with no prior knowledge. And I want to pick your brains about what it's like in your setting, what you're finding helpful, what's working, and just to empower those who are listening to think that could possibly work in my setting. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of what does sharing faith look like, can you just give us a bit of background of what kind of church you're in and how you ended up there working with young people?
Yes, my name is Jess. I am currently in quite a sacramental church, quite an Anglo-Catholic church. I'm the youth worker there for 3 days a week. And then the other 3 days a week, I work for the Diocese of London. And I have the privilege of advising lots of other youth workers around the London Diocese. And so we have Sunday school. I'm not sure if, some people use those terms, some people don't, but we definitely have Sunday schools on Sunday. And we have a fortnightly youth group. And there's a lot of young people in the local area, but we're working at building a volunteer team. So currently it's kind of me and our faithful curate. And I sometimes wrote my mum in to come along as well to help us out. So it's actually the church I grew up in. So I started going to this church when I was 3 days old and went there until I was 16. And then when I was 16, I went to Holy Trinity Brompton, HTB, and I stayed there for 10 years, was in the youth group there, ended up working there for 7 years, did my theology and youth ministry degree with a placement there, and then left about 18 months ago, took a bit of a break and came back to youth ministry, and I now work with an organisation called WYMIC, Youth Ministry and Communion, and they do a lot of work at placing youth workers in more slightly sacramental churches, because I think traditionally sacramental churches or Anglo-Catholic churches have struggled to engage young people in youth ministry when you compare that to kind of the numbers that more evangelical churches get. And so that's the kind of goal of WYMIC, is to place youth workers in those churches and to encourage a sense of partnership amongst churches to do that kind of stuff together, that you're not in it alone.
Exciting. Oh, and it is good. I mean, I'm reflecting on, I heard Justin Brierley talk the other day, and he was talking about sort of the renewal of interest in faith. And he said all these people that he's talking to, they keep saying, keep Christianity weird. Don't make church just like culture. Actually, we are really interested in this weird, wonderful, mystical, ancient, traditional thing. And I think that we went through a whole series, and I think HTB was probably part of this, of a season of time where we made church culturally relevant. Other topics were like how to help your marriage, I don't know, how to do well at work, those kind of topics of our sermon series. And it feels like things have shifted and we're on a totally different plane, and people are really interested in the Orthodox faith, in sacramental faith. What do you think has shifted in young people that means that they're coming back to these more traditional churches?
Yeah, I know it sounds like such a cop-out answer to say, but I genuinely think lockdown had such a huge role to play in this. And I think the rise of kind of TikTok, which I think it used to be Vine. When I was in school, it was Vine, and then it was suddenly TikTok. I don't really understand. But I think young people were they didn't have to go out of their way to look for or seek these kind of spiritual experiences. They were being kind of bombarded with them and they were offering them on a plate to young people just throughout the algorithm. And I think something through the youth ministry, so I was the senior youth pastor at HTB, when we used to kind of run events, it was very much about the how do we get young people there? So what's the tag? So we did a night where we had 1,000 chicken nuggets, and that was how we were going to get young people there. And then whilst they were there, then we would do the worship and kind of that sort of thing. And then I remember a young person coming up to us after lockdown, and they were like, it was at one of these events that we'd had a really fun like tagline type thing. And they were like, when's the worship stuff happening? We were like, well, you've got all of this around. They were like, yeah, but when's the worship? It's like, oh, you're here for that. And that really challenged me. It was a few years ago now. It really challenged me because I found I was being apologetic for introducing the kind of weird side of Christianity. And I think, yeah, just an encouragement to the more sacramental churches that might have the kind of robes or the incense or whatever it might be, that actually that isn't necessarily weird to young people. We might feel slightly apologetic for it, but you have young people scrolling online and they're being offered like tarot card readings or like sagings or witch talk, they call it on TikTok. And so in the grand scheme of things, we're not offering anything any more weird. It's just another thing that they can come and engage with and explore. And so I think you're totally right about not taking the weirdness out of Christianity and just owning it and being like, it is wild and it's got such a history. Like, come and explore that, come and experience it, come and see.
Yeah. In a world of people who love historical reenactment, like where men wearing flowing gowns in church is not actually that weird. I think you're right, we got really apologetic and there was so much kind of negativity towards the church and towards Christianity for so long. And maybe not even in your generation, I'm a little bit older than you, but I think there's almost the church taught everybody to be a bit apologetic and on the back foot and a bit defensive. And then all of a sudden the culture has changed and we're still apologizing when there's no need to.
Yeah, I think that's right. And something that when I was growing up, I'm not even sure if I was taught it, but it was just inferred that the two things you don't really ask people about are who they vote for and their faith. And you just let people have their personal relationship with God and like don't inquire about that. And so I think, yeah, I completely agree that culture is shifting. So you've got young people coming in being like, what is this about? And they're met with adults like me that's still having to learn to take a deep breath and be okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's many things that young people are happy to talk about that in our generation I never would have spoken to my parents about. It just was not public conversation. And, my teenagers will say all sorts of things to me. And I'm like, wow, you take a deep breath and you go, oh my goodness. Yeah. But then it's great because you have a really frank conversation and you clear the air and you can actually speak into those areas rather than leaving teenagers to flounder. But I think faith is one of those areas that it's not taboo anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe it has been because people went really quiet on it. Then suddenly it becomes intriguing. So tell me how you're seeing people engaging that spiritual seeking. How are you seeing new young people coming into faith in your church?
Yeah. So I've been in this role, even though I've been there for many years. The role I've stepped into, I've been there for about a year. And so we're still kind of building bridges with young people. And I think that's something that we often forget as adults that work with young people, is that it takes so much time to build trust. And I think oftentimes we think, oh, we'll open the space, we'll get 10 young people the first week, and then it will go up to 12 and then 15 and it will just keep growing. And that's definitely not what I'm seeing, which might not be an encouragement to people. So our numbers, number-wise, like quite reserved. But the way that young people are coming along is because their friends are inviting them to come and see. And so the majority of the young people that we have are definitely at the stage of just coming and finding their feet and learning to belong in the space and learning to own the space and making it their own. And so for the first few, I think I said we do fortnightly youth group, and that's been going on since before I came, but I've been doing it since last July. And for the first kind of few months, it was very much myself and the curate. We were planning what to do and we would run that. And it's only recently in the past month that we've had young people being like, oh, can we do this week? And could you get this craft and we'll do this? And so we're finally seeing like they're starting to feel the ownership for that. And so I think for our young people, definitely it is much more about knowing that they're safe in a space before they're even willing to have those conversations about faith with us. And yeah, it's not that they're closed off to it, but it's much more, are you a safe person? Are you someone that's going to stick around for the long run? Because if not, engaging in that, because it's vulnerable, I think, talking about what you believe and what you think. And so can I trust this person to talk about that? And so, yeah, seeing a lot of that in the setting. And in the Sunday school, seeing a lot of young people just being really excited about the possibility that it might all be real. The Sunday school lot that I run they're slightly younger. So they school years 4, 5, and 6, which is ages like 7 to 10. And I remember we were talking about prayer, and one girl put her hand up and she said, "Does this work?" Yeah, I think so. And she said, "Can I try it?" And I was like, yeah, that's like the whole point. And so I think, yeah, offering stuff on a plate and just giving them the tools to engage in it and access it in their own time, and kind of, yeah, coming back to them week after week, being like, "Did you try that? Like, how did that go?" And so, yeah, the word for me is like belonging. Yeah, belonging before the believing part is definitely what we're seeing at the moment in our setting.
And would you say that the young people that are connecting into church have got some sort of family faith background, or are they being invited by friends, or are they turning up on their own, or where is the spiritual hunger coming from, and how do they end up with you?
Great question. Like, who are you? So I go into a local secondary school once a week, and a lot of the kids from the local area go to that school. And so that's quite helpful as well to see them twice in the week. And so quite a few of them that I've seen kind of just in the corridors have come along, which is really nice. And so one girl that came a couple of weeks ago, she was very open with the fact that she was like, "I'm an atheist, like I don't believe in any kind of God or faith, but like I'd still like to come." I was like, "Okay, great. Like you don't have to, there's not a kind of tick list as you walk through the door." And so, yeah, in my context at least, we've got talking about the midweek youth group, quite a lot of young people that are interested in faith. And so one girl the other week said, I think I'm a Christian, but I don't think I'm a good one. I was like, great topic. What is a good Christian? And so we've spoken about maybe delving into the Bible a little bit together to explore what is a good Christian and what makes you a Christian. Lots of them have got parents of other faiths as well. And I should say their parents do know that they are at a church youth group, and they're not doing it kind of behind their backs. But that's something we found as well, is that the parents are happy for them to come and explore as well, which has been really nice. And on Sundays, I think a lot of the young people are there because it's just kind of what you do on a Sunday. So there is still that kind of element of, it's Sunday, so we go to church and we do that. And some of them will have parents that are going to pray with them throughout the week, and others of them don't. Kind of invites great conversations in the Sunday school groups, because you're, for some of them, offering them insights that they've never heard before. It's like, my goodness. And so that's kind of what it looks like in our setting.
Interesting. So I'm fascinated that you turn up in the high school. Are you doing assemblies or a Christian union? How do the kids who are not church kids get to know you in the school?
Yeah, so I was asked to come in to run a Christian union, and it must be the funniest looking Christian union ever, because the majority of them are Christian. We've got some kind of Anglicans or Greek Orthodox, and we have a couple of Muslim kids that like to come along as well. And I think it's because I bring biscuits, and so they kind of engage as well in all of that. And so that's what I'm there as. But I think because it is we do always kind of read scripture and we pray, but it's also just a chance for them to come and have an adult that's ready and willing to listen to them, which I think is, I love teachers, and I think it's such a huge calling to be a teacher. But when you are the only adult in a room of 30 young people, you don't have the time to sit down with all of them and just ask how they are. And so I think that's been the way to kind of get them through the door, is I'm just there to listen, but they do also know it's a Christian union. So at the end, we are going to read the Bible and we're going to pray. And yeah, they're all really respectful for that. And some of them will come just for the beginning bit, take a biscuit. And then when we delve into the Bible, they're like, "I'm going to go now, but I'll see you next week." And so that's also really sweet. And I'm very happy with that. But yeah, that's my kind of way into the school. It's a kind of see you, but yeah, probably quite a lax one.
And how are you seeing young people sharing their faith? Like, are those young people in school inviting their non-Christian mates, or are they inviting people to church, or is it more testimony? What's happening for young people?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing the longer that they've come along fortnightly and the longer that they've trusted the space, the more young people, like more friends that they felt that they could invite. And there's a boy that goes to the CU who's a Greek Orthodox, and for him, kind of icons and kind of artifacts are really important to his faith. So he loves connecting kind of iconography and all that kind of stuff. And so he's been talking to the chaplain because he wants to, the word he used was museum. He wants to create a little museum space in the chapel at school. because he thinks that would be a really great way to invite people in to kind of explore faith. And so there's some like really specific ways that young people are doing that, and that's the way he's doing it. And I think it is just a lot of kind of they're inviting their friends along, but it does come from, I need to know that this space is safe first. Yeah, I think thinking back about Sundays again, I think it is because it's so ingrained in this is what we do during the week. We go to church. We've had a lot of young people just bring friends along that have been at their house for sleepovers that night. So it's like, go to a sleepover on a Saturday, go to church the next day. And so that's been really fun as well, because it's like, I don't have a clue if this is what you would normally do, but your friend feels safe enough to invite them into this space. So it's very invitational, we've
That's
seen.
brilliant. And I think let's just talk a little bit about the theology of sharing faith or of faith formation, because I think there can be this idea that a person goes on a journey. You might have heard of like the Engel scale, like are they sort of hostile to God, and then they're sort of softened, and then there's this point where they're like, oh, actually I'm open to a relationship with God. I recognize I need God. I'm going to make a commitment, and whatever the phrasing is, ask Jesus into my life, commit my life to God, or get baptized. All of these sort of, there's like a progression, as it were. A lot of those, I think when we thought about evangelism, and I'm just reflecting on like my childhood, teenage years, sort of evangelism training or just theology that was taught around church, there was definitely this sense of people go on a journey, but there's like a marking point where they cross over. And the thing that will get somebody to cross over is probably like understanding something about God, or understanding something about the Bible, or understanding the gospel, and that therefore that they get mentally convinced and then they make a decision. But I'm not sure that's how it works for a lot of people. I think that's how we've talked about it. But for other people, like maybe that they grew up in church, they were like, well, this is the water I've been swimming in my whole life. I don't remember a moment. I just know that this is my community and this is what we believe. It became more and more real to me, but I can't remember a moment when it wasn't real. But for others, again, it's like a whole thing about being part of something, being part of a community. So I wonder if you muse for a bit on like the theology of sharing faith. What do you feel like it is still, we need to get people to believe certain things and take steps and make public commitments? And not that those things are wrong, they're great. But, or is there a different emphasis coming out, maybe in the sacramental church or just in what's going on in our culture right now?
Yeah, I think, forgive me, I can't actually remember. I think it's Fusion, the student ministry, that have the different types of the ways that people are going to kind of encounter or hear about faith.
Yeah.
And so I think, I mean, we're all so unique. And so all of us are going to have different ways that we're going to best receive or hear about faith. But I do think I'm struck by the liturgy, is it in baptism, where it's, do you believe and trust in him? You say, I believe and trust in him. And I think that's probably what it is for the young people that I work with. It's less about, do you believe and trust in him and understand everything that you're like that he is doing? And I think you're right. It is less about that, because I think, I'm not sure I could answer that question. Do I understand it all? Absolutely not. And I think something I've always held on to, and I try and get the young people to hold on to, is that part in the service where we declare great is the mystery of faith. And I think that's such a beautiful part of, I think liturgy is just, I love liturgy. And granted, I haven't always loved it, but in my older age, in my late 20s now, I feel like liturgy is that thing that you can come back to when you don't have the words to say for yourself. You can hold on to liturgy. It does the work for you. So in those moments, I think, it's less about, okay, I've ticked every box, I understand everything. So now, because I understand, I'm going to believe. I think it is more, especially in the more kind of, I don't want to speak for the whole kind of sacramental tradition, but in the church I'm in especially, it is more about, do I believe? Do I trust? And am I okay with great is the mystery of faith? And so, okay, yes, I do all those things. I guess I'm a Christian. And I think it's after that, I think it's unraveling those questions becomes the rest of your life. Whereas I think when and I'm not saying either one is better, but when I was in that kind of more, when I was at HTB alongside the amazing team that were there, we could have probably pinpointed every young person on the kind of pipeline of faith of, I think they're there. I think this is where they're at. I think this is where, but I think in the setting that I'm currently in, it's more of an acceptance of, well, actually, I think you're going to spend the rest of your life unraveling all of this. And so we probably couldn't pinpoint you because, you believe and you trust in him, but you're still kind of getting kicked out of school because you've punched a kid. Like, so that kind of thing. And then we can have a discussion of, well, that's really interesting. Like, where do your actions and like, where does that fit into faith and all of that stuff? And so I think I would agree that it is less about, and again, that's a huge statement. Young people, it's all, for some young people, they're going to definitely want to understand before they say yes. But for a lot of the ones I'm encountering, it's much more can I see myself having a place in this community? Do I believe and trust? I guess that's enough for me, type thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned the fusion mission styles, and it's I've just Googled them. Convince me is the first one.
I thought you were going to say, can you remember them?
No, I'll help you out. Convince me is the first one, like understanding logic. And that, I think, is how a lot of, evangelism training is around this convince me. But the other ones are show me, focused on action and practical service, talk with me, relationships, storytelling, listening, praying. And then the last one is experience, let me experience, focused on seeing life changing the gospel at work, And so I think, and maybe there's another one that they haven't even listed, which is like, just be with me. Jesus said, follow me. And the disciples had no clue, but followed anyway. So it's that description you have of like, I trust you enough to follow you, but I don't fully get it. And I'm sure the disciples were like that a lot with Jesus. There's plenty of bits in the gospel that they did not fully understand this at the time. And you're like, yeah, that's me too. I do not fully understand it at the time. And you look back 20 years later at your life and you're like, oh, that's what God was up to.
Yeah.
But I have enough faith to keep following. But I also just wonder if we have this very linear concept of like, we've crossed these thresholds, we've achieved sort of up and to the right, we're moving on in our relationship. But like, life's not like that. Like, life goes around in circles and we take forward steps and backward steps and sideways steps. And I think when you're in a community that holds you, and I love what you said about the liturgy having words when you don't. Like, I understand the word liturgy means the work of the people. And I love that because it's like somehow these words we say are the words of our community, and they are the words, the worship that kind of holds us as a community together. And when I'm not fully full of faith, the others worshiping alongside me, singing, saying these words, praying these prayers, carry me when I'm a bit wobbly in that area.
Yeah.
But I might be stronger than somebody else in another area. And together as we worship and do community, we pull each other along and pull each other closer to God. That by worshiping, praying in a community with other people, maybe even in a building that's been there thousands of years, it holds you in a way to say, it's okay if you're wobbling today.
Yeah.
This community is here to hold you. It's not all on you to hold it all together in your head or in your heart and make sense of it. You, as you said earlier, like, you can embrace the mystery and trust that Christ is holding us as much as we're holding on to him, or even when we don't feel like we're holding on very hard, that he still holds us. And so I think somehow that belonging, that doing evangelism as a whole church or as a congregation or even as a youth group, that has a different feel to it. Which might, as you suggested, we all do evangelism, we all connect differently. And so it might be a really helpful framework to explain to young people, this is a good way to share your faith. Invite people, worship with them, pray with them, embrace the mystery with them.
Yeah, and I think if you are in a more sacramental tradition, then you almost have to do, and this is the stage that I feel like our youth are in, is doing the pre-work of, you have liturgy every week, we do communion every week. How can you explain that to your friends so that they understand like the beautiful mystery of that as well? Because I think it's probably easier if you've got a worship band on stage and it looks a little bit more familiar, then your friend will probably be less freaked out walking into that space. Although for me, when I was 16, going from a choir, robed choir, no TV screens, to a band on stage, I was very freaked out. And so I think it can happen whichever way round. But giving young people the kind of tools to understand, like, what is this liturgy? Like, why do we think it is so like beautiful and amazing? And so that they can kind of invite their friends into that, knowing, with some kind of, feeling like they can help their friends engage in that as well. That makes sense. But that's definitely the point that we're at.
How are you equipping your young people to explain, say, communion, liturgy?
What a great
people
question.
go to theological college and still maybe
a really good question. I think
like this. So how does your average 12-year-old explain that to their mate who they've dragged along after a sleepover?
Yeah, honestly. I think what we've been trying to, I think my heart behind it, and I'm talking now slightly cheekily because we haven't actually done this yet. And so I'll send you an email later on if it hasn't worked. But I think the main thing for me is that when you walk into a more kind of structured service where you have the order of service, it can be quite intimidating because you think, oh my goodness, if I don't stand up at the right time, if I don't sit down at the right time, they're going to boo me out. And I think it is just breaking down that barrier and allowing young people to know, do you know what? It's actually okay to ask questions. Yes, it can look very structured, but in our youth groups, in our Sunday school, that is the perfect opportunity to ask, what on earth is all of this? And I think it's less about, for me at least, it's less about giving young people polished answer and more embracing the, isn't this all like wild? Like, what is this? And allowing them to be able to ask questions. Because I think sometimes the church has been quite wary of questions. And I think about my dad, for example, he's just turned 80 in February, and he grew up in Italy and grew up in the Catholic Church, and asking questions, he was always in trouble because he's so inquisitive, but it was seen as real disobedience to ask any question. And I think that's always been something for me, is that I would never want a young person to feel like they couldn't ask a question. And I mean, how many questions does Jesus ask in the Bible? Someone told me the other day, I think it's 300 and something questions he asks. And it's like, that's the whole point of this faith, is that we've got to constantly ask questions. And I think certain traditions are better at accepting those questions than others. And so I think that's something that I would love the young people at my church to feel like they have all authority in the Sunday school, in youth group, to be like, do you know when we said that part about died on a cross or born from a woman? Like, what does that mean? And I think, and so, yeah, I less about giving a theological kind of first class degree answer, and more just creating a culture of, we do all of these things in church. This is a safe space to say that part didn't quite make sense to me, or I don't really understand why we're kneeling there, or what does that mean? Yeah.
I read a book by Priya Parker about, it's called, I think it's The Art of Gathering. And one of the things she talks about is that our culture has lost ritual. Like, we don't do ritual very often, except for at church. But we mark, like, you know, there might be like marriage, baby showers, or an American thing that are sort of, but like, we actually long for celebrations, ways to mark time, mark season, and to embrace mystery and challenge in a way that isn't quite so dot to dot. It isn't, I've got this all figured out. And there's something about ritual that I think it's like good poetry. You can talk around it, but almost if you explain it to death, you kill it. And the point is, there's metaphors, you're putting things side by side so that you draw comparison, but they're not meant to be exactly equal. And it's not a maths equation. It's not this equals that. It's like these things are held together, and there's something about them that's powerful and potent, and I want you to notice it and appreciate it. But if I tell you, you haven't really appreciated it. Yeah. It's like, you know, like if I show you a bunch of flowers and then explain them,
yeah,
you're like, well, it's kind of cool scientifically, but they're beautiful. And but there are ways to learn to appreciate beauty. And maybe by learning names of colors, you appreciate beauty. But I think the same is true about church and about worship. It's like, yes, there's truth, but there's also learning to be still. There's also learning to appreciate. There's learning to be grateful. There's learning, I don't know, the liturgical seasons and stuff. Like there's something rich in that. And I do want us to ask questions. But there's not always one answer to those questions. There's often, what do you think? And what do you notice? And, you know, lots of things in Jesus's teaching, he taught us parables so that we'd mull on it for ages, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's not just one quick answer, or he would have told us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I do think there's something about this kind of evangelism which allows people to sit in mystery, to experience ritual that kind of gets under your skin and you know, works its way around and keeps working on you through the week.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sitting in the mystery, I love that idea of sitting in mystery. It's very uncomfortable. And I think especially, I'm not sure if it's young people kind of in general at the moment, or specifically the young people that I'm seeing, but I think there's the fear of getting an answer wrong. And it's like the idea of there is no right answer. What do you think? It's like, wait, but how am I going to get, like, how do I get the mark? How do I get the point in this exam? And it's like, it's not an exam. What is, sitting in the mystery, it's really uncomfortable. And I think that's the beauty of a kind of the youth group setting, is allowing young people the space that they might not actually be able to sit in the mystery at school because they have to know the answer. But this is like the one place you can come and not know all the answers. And that's actually okay. And I think, you mentioned kind of stillness there. And I think that's something that, if you're listening and you worship at a slightly more sacramental church or an Anglo-Catholic church, then I think that is something beautiful that we have to offer young people, is stillness and moments of quiet and reflection. I mean, it's not just young people. We're all completely bombarded with notifications 24/7. And something popped up on the corner of my screen just then. And I was like, how did that get through? I thought I turned all my notifications off.
You said notifications and it heard you.
And so it's like constantly being bombarded. And so I think we have such a special thing to offer young people. And it's like a weekly retreat of just outside of the madness of the world, outside of the relentlessness of it, where you can just come. You might not understand it all, but you can at least sit and just breathe for a minute. And so I think that's something that I'm seeing. It sounds really weird to talk about like a USP for church, but I think that's something that I'm seeing at the moment. Of like, actually, it's such a unique space that not many spaces have that at the moment. Maybe a library or something, but where else can you go and just kind of, be in community, but also be able to breathe and just exhale a little bit.
Yeah. And not have anybody selling you something. Or,
Yeah.
There is that sense of this is coming at my own pace, or this is coming, I'm part of community, I'm slowing down, I'm breathing, I'm noticing. Yeah, you're right. That is very unusual for our world.
Yeah.
My hunch is that as much as we crave it, it's also really uncomfortable. Do you find like young people, I don't know, sitting in the back of church on their phones or, like for all we're saying that young people are drawn to the weird and to the mystical and to the ritual, they're still addicted to their phones. Yeah. And so like, how does that work? Because we're saying you want this and they do want it, but they still don't know how to switch gears. So how do you help young people navigate that?
Weirdly, the one that we see at the moment is with the like younger children. It's less phones and more snacks. Like every single young person or like child, toddler that stays in the service has got a constant supply of snacks. And it's like, that's the only thing that they can do to like keep them quiet because they feel like they have to be quiet. And so, we definitely have young people that would rather read a book or scroll on their phones. And I think young people are incredible for the majority of the time, incredibly respectful when they understand why they're doing something, which goes back to the offering them a chance to explore what's happening in the service in a safe space. Because I think once you give them the language to engage with it, then it's like, oh, okay, I'll try this. And I was remembering that a friend and I, a guy called Tom Clark, who's used to be the head of youth at HTB, one of my best friends. And we wrote last year for Thy Kingdom Come, a digital detox resource for young people. And we've just done another one this year. And so I think offering young people resources like that can just try and put the rhythm of putting your phone down and making it part of the everyday, so that if they do find themselves in church on a Sunday, it doesn't feel as scary. For some young people, it genuinely is like scary to put your phone down. It's like, what if I miss this? What if I miss the invitation of a lifetime? And I do actually, I get that as well. And I have to challenge myself because I've always got my phone in my back pocket, even in church. And sometimes I put it in my bag and I'm like, oh goodness, what if I miss something in 45 minutes? And so I think, for us, it's offering young people those kind of resources that allow them to engage in some sort of digital detox or something that challenges them. Because I think not just young people, I love to be challenged. Like I love to challenge myself. And so almost seeing it as a game against yourself can be fun.
Competitive keeping your phone off.
Who can do that for the longest?
It used to be sleeping lions, can you be quiet? Now it's can you put your phone away? I was talking to a couple of people. We're doing a series called Digital Evangelism as part of this Reimagining Evangelism series. And one of the things they were talking about is really helpful for churches to do on their social media feeds is to give people a taster of what it's like to be in the church so that they've kind of seen it before they're there. And I was just thinking about all these beautiful like mysteries, and why does the vicar wear a robe that has that pattern on it? Why is the chalice look like that? Why do we say those words? And maybe that's like a great TikTok series, is like really short explainer videos or question videos of like, well, I think we do it like this, and then somebody else says, well, when we do it, and I noticed this about it. So there's not a right answer necessarily, or there's a few right answers, but again, it offers ways in that young people could watch on their phones when they're addicted outside of church. And then it makes this experience when they're in a gathered worship setting richer, or they have some insights, or they have some words to share and explain with their friends what it's about. And I think it's not just young people who need that kind of thing. There's people who've been in church for, most of their lives, and they're like, why do we have purple cloths up at Lent? And you're like, yeah, great question. Let's talk about it. But yeah, there's lots of mystery and tradition that does need explaining, not explaining away, but enriching with explanation and with more questions. And so, let's embrace the technology to disciple our young people and give them ways in.
And it's almost like explaining and like unlocking the door into the mystery, because we were doing a communion preparation class with a couple of year sixes the other day, like 3 year 6 girls, and we were going through the Nicene Creed. No, we were going through the Apostles' Creed. The curate did such a great job at not explaining it to them, but saying like, what do you think? And like the look on their faces when they'd realized it was like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Oh my goodness, each one's got like, it talks about all of them. And they were like really excited. And it was like he'd handed them the keys to unlock the mystery for themselves, and to keep exploring and to keep seeing like the newness and all of the liturgy, and uncovering all those things. And because it would be so easy to, as you say, explain away, because I mean, I don't have children, but I've been around a lot of them, and sometimes the constant like, why, you just want to say like, well, it's just because that's how it is, just stop. But actually, like, what a gift that they would want to ask why in a church context. And so I love that idea of not explaining away, but actually enriching their experience of it all.
Inviting the questioning and inviting the exploration. Yeah, I think that is it. And I think there's also something around not giving them answers, but giving them the tools to unpack it themselves.
Yeah.
And so, if you say, memorize this, or, I mean, there's nothing wrong with memorizing Bible passages, because actually, if you then say them to yourselves, you can unpack them to yourselves. But like, it's not memorizing the answer. It's meditating on it and wrestling with it so that it becomes part of you, and it's kind of landed in a new way. But you will come back to it in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, when you experience grief, when you're in a different season of your life. And all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I hadn't seen that before, but it was there all along. It doesn't mean the way I saw it before wasn't true.
Yes. Yeah.
It's still true. But this community that I'm in, and they're all worshipping of different ages, they've seen that and they've held it. And that's the beauty of really good liturgy, is it does explain or hold the mystery of, maybe explain's not the right word. It holds the mystery of faith a bit better and invites others into it, hopefully.
Yeah. No, Tom used to talk about like the role of a youth worker is giving young people the tools in their toolkit for a lifelong kind of journey with Jesus. Because actually we only, as soon as they turn 18, they're out of youth group. And so they find themselves at university, or they've moved out of wherever they were living. And how do we give them the tools? Like, if their faith is dependent on being able to come and ask Jess, I've got a question, what does this mean? Okay, now you've said it, now I understand it. Then you remove them from the Jess in their life, and it's like, oh, I don't have a faith. I had someone to explain everything to me. But actually, like, let's give them the tools to grapple with stuff that they can take forward forever. So definitely about giving them the tools to do that for themselves.
And let's be the kind of communities where you can ask questions at any age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that stops. I used to get quite fearful of all the questions, because especially this is the first time that I've kind of done employed youth work in a more sacramental church. I was so fearful of the questions, because I was like, I don't actually know the answer to that. Like, why are we singing that Gloria right now? I have no idea. And so I think young people just respect you being able to say, I have no idea. I'm going to try and find out for next week. You go and have a look. We'll see what we found together. Because I think there's a big fear of saying the wrong thing, getting things wrong, and them realizing that that I'm a fraud and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. But I think the idea that we're exploring and learning together is just so what community is about.
Yeah. And I guess sometimes it's like saying, well, it's tradition. That's why we do it. It's tradition, or it's a pathway that somebody developed and we thought was good. But, different churches do it different ways, as we all well know. And it's not, we don't necessarily do it because that's what Jesus did. He probably sang in Hebrew, and did different traditions. But this is a way that we have learned that helps us explore the mystery of faith and holds us, and for many people is helpful. And if it helps you, great, But I think it is fascinating, isn't it? Exploring faith in community and exploring faith alongside young people is always a privilege. Just as you say, getting to hear their questions, getting to watch their discovery, how they provoke us. It's a gift.
It really is, a huge privilege.
If people want to, come and visit your church or find out more about sacramental youth work, how can they get in touch, Jess?
Yeah. Well, you can absolutely come and visit the church. We're at St. Luke's and Christ Church in Chelsea. So there's two churches, one parish. Or you can search up WYMIC, WYMIC London, Youth Ministry in Communion. And we've got a lot of stuff going on there that you can find all the contact details on that page as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jess. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
Roots is committed to helping you lead great church that's growing, relevant, engaging, authentic, and together. Our lectionary passages for this season are all about Jesus commissioning his disciples to share faith and make disciples. So we're currently running an article series called Reimagining Evangelism, exploring the fresh ways churches are sharing faith. What's working, what's changed, and what resources do we need to do it? We're also looking specifically at how we can equip and encourage young people to share faith. So check the show notes for links to articles on Roots' website and the resources Jess mentioned. If you're not familiar with Roots, we serve over 11,000 churches in the UK, Ireland, Australia, and around the world. We publish fresh articles, podcasts, Bible notes, insight on current events, prayers, songs and hymn suggestions, intergenerational service outlines, and Bible-based content for children, youth and toddlers. Phew, that's a lot. We've got everything you need to help you lead worship, Bible studies, small groups, and share the story of Jesus in your community. For those of you from sacramental churches, we offer weekly intercessions and prayers to support the Eucharist called Bread and Wine, all written to be fully compatible and compliant with Anglican canon law. We also have resources called Discovering God, which are interactive sessions useful for confirmation classes and youth groups. Roots is a partnership of many denominations and Christian organisations working together to resource the church. Our content is published in the order of the Revised Common Lectionary, with common worship variations for the Church of England, where the Bible readings vary. But if that's not your church's tradition of reading through Scripture, that's fine. You can search our 25-year archive of content covering the majority of the Bible to find engaging and creative preaching, worship and storytelling resources, all for a very affordable annual subscription. Head to rootsforchurches.com to take a free trial. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it with your friends and network, and leave us a review so that others can find it. Together, we can grow.